Hey, fellow traveler. Welcome to the Third Eye Awakening podcast, a show where we talk all about spiritual and psychic awakening, magic, the shift from 3D to 5D, star seeds, ascension, multiple timelines, multiple dimensions, the universe, the multiverse, the Akashic records, all the good things. I am your host, Amy Belair, and I'm so glad to have you here with me today. Okay, let's do this. Hey, my beautiful friends. Thank you so much for listening to Third Eye Awakening. Welcome, welcome. I'm so excited to have you here. Hey, have you heard the news? I have a new Patreon. Actually, I started it a year ago, but I just didn't have the infrastructure in place in my business to be able to stoke that fire. And so I had to pull the plug pretty quickly, although it was an amazing idea. However, now its time has come and it is new and it's exciting and it is going to be the place where all of my downloads and transmissions go to live moving forward. I'm really excited. It's just a collecting place for all of my raw, uncut, unfiltered, when I get something and I'm like, woo, this needs to be shared. I'm just going to record it and I'm going to drop it in the Patreon. It's also where all of my super cool masterclasses are going to live. And my masterclasses are for instance, I just did one on the Galactic Gateway. So when you sign up for the Patreon at a certain level, I think it's a $33 a month level, you get automatic access to all of my masterclasses. The next one is activating your archetype. The one after that is about manifestation and timeline jumping. So if all of those things sound super cool to you, then you might want to come to the Patreon and check it out. There is so much more that is going to be happening in this community, that is happening in the Patreon space, I guess you could say. But at the lowest tier, meaning if you are just kind of, wanting to dip your toe in and you want a little bit of extra Amy, you want to support the show, you want to hear some cool shit, then at the $5 a month level, what you get are bonus episodes from the podcast. And you also get new moon and full moon rituals / downloads / messages from me. Plus you get my weekly energy reports. So this week's podcast guest is Adam Simmons. He is 1/3 of the Creatures of the Night trio. And that is an incredible podcast, very entertaining to me. I enjoy it very much. And I got to go on it last year and chat with them. And we had a great conversation. I really love all of their vibes so much. Each of them individually, all three of them together. And Adam shared some really beautiful perspectives. He's just kind of been cracked open by, well, you'll hear his awakening story. And it's very unique. And it's not the way it works for everyone, but it might be the way it works for some people. And it is the way it worked for him. And he just learned how to integrate it and he's gone with it. And now he's so open that he's we're friggin' recording this podcast conversation. And he's holding pieces of orange calcite because he's I'm creative and I'm manifesting. And I always have my calcite on hand. If you don't know what calcite is, it's a type of mineral, AKA a crystal. And Adam, yeah, he's really surrendered to this awakening process and just this ever unfolding awakening journey. He has some beautiful motivational words for anybody that's feeling kind of trapped by their ego. And we talk about excuses, and I get a little bit sassy about, excuses and the way that our ego tries to limit us and what happens when we hang around in that energy for too long. And Adam just really shares some beautiful, as I said, motivation around getting over our excuses and really the easy hacks to use from wherever we are to really facilitate our awakening, move to the next level, basically cooperate with this whole, it's as Abraham Hicks says, becoming a cooperative component. but she slash like Esther slash Abraham is using it in reference to our manifestations, and Adam and I are using it in reference to the expansion of our freeing consciousness, which is what I'm all about, as you all know. And so there is a Patreon bonus. I think this is the first like bonus show to go in, which is really exciting. And Adam and I talk about superpowers. He's been thinking about superpowers nonstop for like the last 2 years, he tells me. And he wants to know what if I could pick one superpower, what would it be? And I share. And then he tells me what his one superpower would be. And then we talk about I kind of share how I think that the superpower that he has chosen is something that we can already do and that I already do in a very, very like undisciplined, low key way. But it's cool. It's a cool superpower. It's not like, it's how do I say it without saying it? It's a cool superpower. And I think it's something that we can already do. And this is something that I've been playing with for a little while. I already know that I do it. You should come to the Patreon and listen to the bonus so you can hear what it is and try it for yourselves, because it's pretty dope when you start doing it. Anyway, okay. I've been talking for way too long. I really hope that you enjoy this episode. I really hope that you at least go over the Patreon page and just check it out and peruse and look and like, oh, what looks good to me? Is there this level that I want to engage in? There are, as I've said, we've made multiple tiers of engagement for people. And there's a lot of ways to connect and come play with me and have fun and receive all kinds of value. And in addition, though, you are helping to support me in continuing to make this podcast because, as I've said before, making the podcast costs me money, but I'm very committed to making this. This is like my offering of absolute love to the world. And I'm so gratified, even though I cannot respond to every message that I get anymore. I'm so deeply gratified to read all of the messages from everybody who reaches out and just, expresses their love of this podcast and the conversations that are being held and shared here. And it's my commitment to continue making it not only a good show, but making it a great show, improving on it, bringing in guests that you'd like to hear from, always feel free to DM me with guest suggestions, topics that you want to hear about. I'll either fit them into the podcast or into the Patreon. It brings me so much joy to make this contribution. So without any further unnecessary or necessary preamble from me, I'm going to turn us over to this awesome conversation between myself and Adam Simmons. I hope you enjoy. Hey, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Third Eye Awakening. I'm really, really happy to have my friend Adam here today to talk to me. Adam Simmons, he is a podcaster, a writer, an accidental astronaut, and a theoretical biologist. Doctor, but not really doctor, Adam D. Simmons. He is one half of the Simmons and Moore podcast, and he is 1/3 of the Creatures of the Night podcast. And I met him on Creatures of the Night. We had an amazing conversation roughly a year ago. It was a lot of fun. Him and his co-stars are hilarious, very entertaining. Highly recommend this podcast. But we're going to have a one-to-one conversation today because in the process of having that conversation last year, Adam shared with me, and I'm thinking some DMs at some point, shared with me some crazy stories about accidental spiritual awakening and psyche cracking open experiences that he had that really kind of messed with his perception of life. And I was like, we need to explore this deeper. So Adam, thank you so much for being here. Welcome.
Amy, thank you so much for having me. It's great to see you. You're the best. We love you so much. You're a hot topic among the creatures. Often, Chris and Jay, they send their love. They send all of their regards. Guys, thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of your day. I do appreciate it greatly. And yeah, I said I'm a theoretical biologist again because of the I'm thinking about superpowers and fake alien life. And I'm an accidental astronaut because I accidentally smoked peyote for 6 or 8 months and I had no idea. and it broke my brain. And then I went into a different dimension and I was talking to different entities. And then all of a sudden I started buying crystals and meditating and doing yoga. And I went from being like this super bro that, smoked cigarettes and drank whiskey and partied and got in fights and stuff to like this woo-woo white dude that, is now going and getting aura photos taken and meditating and being more mindful. And it was totally by accident, but I couldn't be more excited to be here and to be that version of myself as opposed to the wild 25-year-old that used to get kicked out of bar anticipation in Belmar. So how are you? Great to be here. Yay.
Yay. Yeah. Oh my God, I'm so excited to hear all about all the details. So because this is a podcast about spiritual awakening, would you indulge me and share with all of us your sort of the like semi-linear trajectory of your spiritual awakening experience, whatever that means to you? Like you said that you were kind of like a bro, smoking cigarettes, not really thinking about crystals and aliens and shit at one point in your life. Is that accurate?
Yeah. So like I grew up like a science fiction nerd, like totally grew up on like Frazetta and Lord of the Rings and Star Wars and aliens and the whole nine. I always loved space. You know what I mean? I didn't just start wearing these glasses. I was a full-blown dork, but I was always like, I'm from New Jersey. Like we're all super bro-y. You know what I mean? You go and you meet other dudes your age and they're just like, yeah, we're gonna fucking do cocaine and fuck bitches. And you're like, all right, I guess that's what dudes do, right? Like, let's go do that stuff. That sounds enticing because Scarface is a movie. And you end up doing a couple of drugs and you're smoking weed. And there was a time in my life where I needed to pass a drug test, right? So it's like, guys, I gotta like really like dial it back on all of the drugs or whatever. And they were like, oh, like a friend of mine was like, yo, there's this stuff. It's called Happy Shaman. They call it a spice, air quotes if you're just listening. I did a little finger quotes. They call it a spice, but it's weed. It's totally weed. It's like a synthetic version of weed. You could just smoke it and then you get regular high and then you're just regular you. And I'm like, oh, I love being regular high. This is fantastic. So my friends are all smoking it and they all seem super normal. And I'm like, hell yeah, let's send it, boy. So I'm doing it, whatever. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm pretty regular high. And then it just starts revving up. And I'm like, I'm not regular high anymore. And then it starts revving up more and it starts revving up more. And you're just like, man, that was super interesting. Like what happened? So it turns out that I accidentally smoked peyote for about 6 or 8 months. Like I said, I was utilizing a substance that I thought was a synthetic marijuana. Unfortunately, it was laced with peyote. During that time, every time I smoked, I would psychedelically trip and got stuck in a perpetual state of deja vu while I was awake. It seemed as though I was dreaming, but I was awake at the same time. It felt as though like I was stuck between the two realities to a point where I felt untethered from both. So like I was actively dreaming and actively awake, but I was just witnessing both at the same time and kind of like trying to operate myself in between both states. And I'm like, I don't know what to do here. I'm kind of getting a little panicked. Like, let me dial it back. And then one day I'm just chilling at home, hanging out with all my friends. I obviously haven't stopped using this substance because like, why stop getting fucked up if you have to do a drug test, right? Why not just like stop all like ingestion of chemicals? No, that's not the New Jersey bro way. So I go deeper. I'm like, all right, we're doing it. And looking back on it now as I'm telling the story, maybe like everything is intentional, right? It happens for us, not to us type of thing. Maybe I was called to it. Maybe my body was like, hey, nerd, like we need this for us. Like, so you got to go deeper. So I went deeper, right? And I'm hanging out in my bedroom and I smoke. And then something happened. I went into this place that I call interdimensional Miami, right? It was incredibly fractal and there's geometry everywhere. And I'm looking out a window and I see all these palm trees and buildings and we're on like the surf side of Miami. And I'm like, oh my God, this is beautiful. And there's a lot of teals and blues and purples and like all this cream white. And I'm like, oh, this is great. And then I turn to my side and it looks as though I'm sitting inside of a stretch limo. And on one side of me and on the other side of me are two entities, right? And hear me out. I know that this is a safe space, and I know that like all of you guys are like just as strange and as weird as I am, but like this is where I lose a lot of people, okay? One of them was a robot and one of them was a duck, okay? And I don't know why and I don't know how, but they were there. And one was quacking away in my ear and the other one was like beep, boop, 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 beep, boop, and in my other ear. And we were all and I was speaking English, like American English, like, what's up, my dude? How you doing? Whatever. And they're going beep, 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 and quack, 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 quack. And we were all speaking the same language. We understood each other perfectly. Now, do I think that I was just tripping balls? Maybe. But the deeper I dug in, the more I'm like, hey, maybe these guys are spiritual guides. We got to get back to this place. Subsequently, I would, go back to that place and I would have conversations with them. Hey, what's going on here? Oh, you don't know? Oh, you don't know about this place? Oh, okay, well, you're not ready. See you later. And they would just throw me back into the regular world. And I'd be like, oh, the hell is...
Really? They let you in one time and then they're like, but you don't know what it is. Get out.
They were like, well, you're not ready. Like, if you don't know, then you're not ready. And I was like, yeah, but no, I'm ready. And they're like, nah, don't look like... After a couple of times going back, I was like, man, like what's going on? And then I would try and keep the conversation. They were like, you're not asking the right questions. You're not ready. And I was like, okay. So when I found out that I was accidentally smoking peyote, I was like, oh, this totally makes sense, right? Let's go back to regular decaf weed, like super regular of the earth weed. I took literally one hit of weed and I went there immediately. And I was like, oh no, like my brain's broken. Like I'm broken. Like I can't get fucked up ever again. Like I go right back to interdimensional Miami. Like this is the only place I go now when I do drugs. And my friends are like, are you for real? Like you trip off of one? I'm like, yeah. So like I stayed off of marijuana for like a long time and I stayed off of weed and it was like a year. And then one day I was like, drinking, hanging out, and someone was like, you want to try smoking again? I was like, sure. So I started smoking again and casually worked my way back into it. And then, the edible revolution had hit, right? This was a couple of years ago. Now, all of a sudden, you could just get edibles anytime, anywhere, all the time. You know what I mean? People started to understand the complexities of cooking weed and things of that nature. So I took an edible and I go and I meditate and I'm sitting down. I'm kind of like, just like vibing, chilling by myself. I'm popped right back in. And they were like, hey, bud, how you been? And I'm like, oh, hey, guys, what's going on here? And they're like, oh, this is the place. Like, you're back. And I was like, hey, well, I missed you. How you been? They're like, you good? I'm like, how's regular life going on? And we start talking, whatever. And then we're in the limo, right? And we're driving. They're like, hey, do you want to get out? I'm like, what? There's another place. It's not just this limo talking to you fucking nerds. Oh, cool. So we go to this place that I can only, I only recognize as like the bar, right? Like, so there's a couple of different, I know that you said like, make it snappy, but I apologize. If you guys know who I am, I'm going to, elaborate a lot. I'm talking a lot with my hands. I'm going to do a lot of cursing, so I apologize. Bear with me. So I eventually, as I'm going through subsequent trips, right, we go to different places, and then they start to talk to me about different things. They're like, hey, when you were a kid and you got beat up in 4th grade on that trip, like that wasn't your fault. He was having a bad day, and his dad had been hitting him for 8 months. And he took it out on you and he feels terrible about it. And I'm like, okay, like, so I'm not a total asshole, right? I know that I had probably said, and we started to work out all of my insecurities and all of the little things that would, the hangers that you get on life. You know what I mean? All the anchors that are holding you back from being your truest, most highest self. And these guys ended up being this robot and this fucking duck, right? That were both incredibly nice to me. Apparently they, helped me to understand a lot of the trauma that I had been going on in my life. And now, again, I mean, I know that we touched on it on your episode of Creatures, but like maybe that is just what my interpretation of the inner workings of my brain are. Just like when Chris Watsky was, sitting on that slab in the factory with all the little gnomes and the bubbles and stuff. You know what I mean? Maybe my brain is just Miami with ducks and robots. You know what I mean? And in a limo, like super 1980s, like wild white car shit, So who knows? But that began my journey into being more receptive of, I don't want to say the occult or things that were avant-garde. You know what I mean? Like yoga and spirituality and auras and, vibe, like checking people's vibes and like understanding, being more acutely aware of everything that's going on around me, not just peripherally, but under the surface. Instead of being like, oh, I'm getting a cup of coffee with my friend Amy. It's like, I can kind of see Amy's having a great day. I am also having a great day. This is good. The guy next to us is probably in an argument on his phone or whatever, that sort of thing. So it started to make me more acutely aware of things of that nature. And then it is just exponentially grown since then. Like we were discussing earlier, like I have calcite with me at all times because I'm trying to get my life's purpose and joy and shit like that. You know what I mean? I'm trying to be creative and confident, and orange calcite is just the way to do it. You know what I mean? But yeah, it's taken me on this journey to like understand that traumatic experience of accidentally ingesting a substance that I did not know I was doing had set me on this path to enlightenment. And because of that, I've met probably the most important person I think I'll ever meet in my life, and now we're engaged and that's cool. But yeah, right. Super cool. She's totally a witch. She doesn't want to admit it, but she is. And, we're just living that woo-woo white person life. And I went from like a super bro that wore skulls on his shirts to like, now I'm hanging out at farmers markets and doing sound healing and stuff like that on the weekends. So it's incredible. And if that experience had never happened, I would have never met you. And I would probably not have been podcasting or been as happy as I am now. So I can't, thanks for accidentally giving me peyote, the world.
Like, thanks, Spice.
Random bodega. I bought this $7 packet of weird shit at,
That's such an incredible experience, though. Like, it's so funny. As you're describing it, it takes me back to our conversation on Creatures, where I remember being like, in my mind's eye, it's like a combination of Tron and Miami Vice, and it's just like wild.
A lot of yeah, it was exactly like Tron. I dropped in and I was like, all right, what in the fuck is going on here? Yeah.
Fractal geometric astral Miami.
100%. Yeah.
And so do you now, like, it's funny that they were like, oh, you don't know. I'm imagining kind of like a club. Like, they're like, you don't know what this is. Oh, like, trust me, you're not ready. And you're like, I'm ready. And they're like,
No.
get out.
Like, I needed more events to happen in my life. I guess I needed to heal in the external life from some traumas. I needed to take some of the information that I had got then and applied it into my regular life to get deeper, kind of like a video game. You know what I mean? So now it's like, if I need to, regular meditation and mindfulness and things of that nature are so incredibly helpful, but like, you can only hit so far. You can only get so deep. So, if you have to go and use psilocybin and a sensory deprivation tank to go a little deeper and to uncover some traumas that you need to heal, then, that's what you need to do now. And luckily I am afforded a lifestyle where I can do that sort of thing. I don't work at a khakis and cubicle kind of job. Luckily, I don't know that I ever will, because I'll walk in and I'll be like, here's my bag of crystals. What's up, guys? How you doing? And they're like, fucking guy, I need you to go. You need to like worry about TPS reports and like fucking deadlines. Like, no. That shit's weird. I'll see you later. But yeah, luckily, it's never done, right? I'm sure that I'm just scratching the surface of like whatever multitude of dimensions that we have. Like, I remember last time we spoke, we were talking about 5D and everything else, and taking what from this realm and applying it exponentially down the line. I know nothing. I am like a white belt at best at this stuff, but I definitely feel better. I feel like I'm doing more for me than I ever have been before. So I'm incredibly grateful for that.
And like life is so much more interesting, in my opinion. And I believe that, like, I don't know, I think one of my founding philosophies is that we're all like way more magical, and life is way more magical than we have been encouraged to believe or perceive. But the thing is, we secretly all know it, which is why we love our fantasy fiction. Like you were talking about when you were like a nerd kid and you loved like comic books, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings. Like, why does all that appeal to us? It's because there's a part of us that's like, yeah, like I remember seeing Lord of the Rings. I didn't read the books first. I saw the movies. And I remember the scene in the first Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring, when Gandalf is like trapped at the top of the tower and he catches a moth and whispers to it and then lets it go. And then the moth comes back with a big eagle. And I was like, a part of my brain was like, yes, like I know I can do that. Like on some level, I know that that's possible. I know I can do it. So I think really that's why we have these defense mechanisms that are created by the trauma we experience, so that we kind of like get into this sort of bro mentality, or for an, I suppose we could say like a Karen mentality if you're female, but just like that, like, no, I can't.
Yeah.
Are the way that I'm told, and I'm gonna freak the fuck out if somebody challenges that. I'm just not open to it. But then that's just self-preservation. That's just coming from our ego that's like, I've experienced so many micro traumas and possibly macro traumas that exist in a very intense realm. And like my best coping mechanism right now is to like shut out the possibility of anything good and just settle for like total bland mediocrity. But then when we kind of that cracks open through whatever avenue, accidental peyote smoking, for example, then all of a sudden this magic comes flooding back in. And then kind of like there's no turning back, because it feels so, life just becomes so much more interesting.
Yeah, of course. And not only like the preconceived notion of what should go on in the world, right? But like our parents do a great job, and school does a great job of turning you from a circle into a square, or
Yeah.
whatever shape you are into a square, right? So they'll hammer you and hammer you and hammer you and tell you, you make believe is not real, and you can't do this and you can't do that, and oh, fairies this and oh, blah blah blah. And then it gets to a point where you're like, hey man, like, maybe I'm just regular. Maybe I'm just mad regular like every other person. And you're like,
Regular.
yeah, I like, like when you're a kid, you're intuitive.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, something's going to happen. Like, how many times have you stopped for a second and then someone has ridden by on a bicycle? You know what I mean? Like, that's real, man. Like, that's totally real. And that is like a drop from the glass and the glass is filled with water from an ocean. You know what I mean? It's like you can go so much deeper, and the world does a really super great job. It does a really great job of hammering you down, because if you're worried about magic and feelings and shit like that, you're not going to be a good consumer. You know what I mean? You're not going to go and buy prescription drugs. You're not going to go and like go drink Coca-Cola or eat bacon, you know, all the good stuff that they want you to have. And look, don't get me wrong, I fucking love bacon. Bacon's the shit.
Yeah.
But the simple fact of the matter is that like consumerism and the world that we exist in does not benefit from us being our magical selves. So it is in the best nature of the world to make sure that we're not magical. And on top of that, they know that they can capitalize on our yearning, our love of magic, our love of the spiritual by just pumping it in your face through media like Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, Star Trek, Marvel, this one, that one, DC, everything is all magic and creatures and manifestation and ghosts and spirits and this and that and astral projection. Fucking Doctor Strange sold 40 gajillion dollars. This motherfucker is astral projecting. He's using his third eye. He's manipulating worlds. He's going into magic. He's speaking to different beings, and everyone's like, oh, it's totally cool. Why do you think that's cool? Like, why? Do you think that maybe because like you have a deep yearning, you have a deep understanding of what could possibly be? Oh, I wish that could really happen. How do you know it can't? I mean, really, like I know people who astral project. They could totally do it. Not me. I can't do it. Again, white belt, super like I just showed up, put my feet on the mat. I'm like, oh, hey, I see you guys doing some cool shit over there. That's kind of nice. I'm going to go sit over here and do some warm-ups. You know what I mean? But like there are dudes that hang out on the side of mountains and are just like, you know, talking to ducks and robots all day, you know, like they do whatever they want and they don't, you know, they don't care. They don't have the newest Nikes. They're not wearing Yeezys, right? So they're not like hype beast. They don't have $8,000 t-shirts and all that. But, you know, if you want it bad enough, or if you are called to it, right, and you are ready to receive that information, it's going to happen. And whether you like it or not, i.e. my experience, it's going to happen, and it's going to happen fast. And you either have to drown or learn how to swim. You know what I mean? And again, to back to your point, it doesn't behoove the government to create magical beings. Because then we're like, what's a government? I don't care. What are these invisible lines? Who cares? Delaware, Idaho, who cares? We're all the same people. They're like, no, the fuck you're not. You guys are wearing 2 different shirts and you guys like 2 different sports. And these people were born over there and they're less good than you are here. All right, ready, fight. Also, buy Coca-Cola. You know?
Totally. Exactly. Yeah. And then develop diabetes and buy all these drugs, you know, to be, yeah, 100%. And man, there's so many things that I want to say. So I do feel like I'm glad that you mentioned about how, you know, there can be a plateau that people reach when cultivating their spiritual gifts through like traditional techniques like meditation. And I think that's true. And I think it's because it's not really like it's still fringe. It's becoming more accepted, but it's still fringe, which means that when we're meditating in the like, you know, the 30 minutes that we carve out a day, but the rest of the day we're living according to the rhythms of Western society, I think that's what creates the plateau. And I think like in order to get farther, it's like we have to rearrange our entire lives. And it's hard to do that. Oh my God. Like it's humbling to realize how like snapped into the false matrix grid I am, even though
Indoctrinated, man.
for myself at home. You know what I mean? Like I do that. I podcast and I do readings with people and like hold a bunch of cool masterminds and shit. And I still can feel the ways that just because I had both of my parents were teachers, elementary school teachers. So I got so ingrained with the school schedule rhythm that it feels like it still rules my conscience. Like I'm patterned with it, you know, and it's a lot of work to dissolve that patterning. So I think those things are the part that limit us. Whereas if we were to move to, you know, India and really prioritize, completely change our lives, we would probably get past those plateaus without necessarily needing to use psychedelics. But I agree that psychedelics are like a hack. And this time last year when I was talking to people, I was either, pregnant or had just had my baby. So I wasn't using any kind of drugs of any nature. And I hadn't been for quite a while because my two youngest are born close enough together. And before that, I was a midwife. So I really felt like, I can't risk being high when I get called to go be in charge of somebody's medical situation. So I hadn't used anything for a long time, but I recently started macrodosing. But or microdosing. But I'm so sensitive that a microdose feels like more like a mini dose. Like it wouldn't, it's supposed to be subperceptual, but I perceive it. And I'm like, wow, yes, this is a hack. Well, basically, what I think that it does is it like separates your nervous system. There's this guy named Jason Breshears who's like really, hot right now because I don't know, his work is blowing up. He's amazing, like prolific researcher. And he talks about it that like we're in this holographic simulation, which I totally agree we are. And the nervous system is what keeps us locked into it. And we interpret the energy according to what our nervous system perceives and what our ego construct can handle. Right. So that colors, I mean, like you and Chris were probably like you were talking about his float tank experience and comparing it to your, peyote experience and then your post peyote experience. You probably were tapping into a similar realm. I think it's probably the astral realm, but it looked totally different to both of you because you have
As a percent.
right. But I think the benefit of psychedelics is that it sort of like deactivates or disarms your nervous system so that your filters are expanded. Like the mesh of your filter becomes way more porous and you're taking in way more information. And I think that the assistance that those offer us, if we can engage with them from a place of not trying to numb out and get away or develop a codependence on it, but instead we develop like a relationship with it and we sort of like use them to kind of raise us up just a little bit higher. And then when we're not using them, try and get back there ourselves. I just think it's really amazing. And I do think it's a really good hack, especially when we do live in this, I don't know about the rest of the world, but Western society rhythms, the false matrix of the Western world is extremely, it's just like, it's everywhere. It's like being stuck in a spider web and like, oh my God, how do I get out of this? And I think that psychedelics are one of those hacks to like start, dissolving the threads that keep us tethered into it.
Well, yeah, of course. And, if nothing else, it opens your mind, like you said, to more. You know what I mean? It's like watching television on an old black and white 1960s TV Brady Bunch, and then like going and watching like Avatar in 8K, whatever. Or, you know what I mean? This looks realer than real life. And you're like, what does that even mean? I know what it means. You know what it means.
Yeah.
What does that mean? So then, if you do something like, microdose ketamine, and then you're hanging out in the forest and you're like, the trees are breathing and I can hear the mushrooms communicating with each other. You're like, the person next to you that is also on ketamine is like, yeah, no, I get it. I'm here with you. Like if you do ayahuasca, like I haven't had the pleasure of doing or the opportunity of doing ayahuasca yet. Right. But I feel incredibly called to it. It's very similar. They're like, yeah, you go out in the jungle and then you're like, you might have to wrestle some demons. You might have to go, handle some jaguars or whatever mentally, and you're going to puke up a bunch of black shit. But like you tap into a different realm, you have no idea what is around us, and it's around us at all times. And like you said, the constructs in which we're brought into this world, better than anyone else. Like being a midwife, you were talking about like intuition has nothing to do with it. It's incredibly clinical from the moment you're out until, you die. You know what I mean? You're hammered in school, you're hammered in college, you go to work and you're hammered down. You have to wear a certain color t-shirt. You have to put this name tag on it. You can't get into this building without a badge. And there's locks and there's procedures and there's meetings and this and that. And you're just like, no, this is how the world works. Like, and then when you retire and then your great nephew shows up with like a cookie, you eat it and all of a sudden you're like, and then you're like, on from reality, and you're like, I could have been doing this the whole time. What? I was a data input analyst for 39 years. I could have been doing this. Like, what's wrong with me? You know what I mean? And luckily now, as you said, it's becoming less fringe and more looked into because, Western medicine has failed us. We know the before the pandemic, the first time there was a pandemic of, heroin overdoses, Oxycontin overdoses, because they were making so much that they were just like putting it out on the street. You know what I mean? People were just ODing crazy,
Yeah.
they were misinterpreting their feelings, their yearning for a disconnection from this world. Instead of looking inside, they looked outside and they were just like, well, this is what's available to me. This is the same reason why people power drink. You know what I mean? They want to disconnect and they want to get blurry and they want to turn it off, as opposed to turning it off and turning something else on. They just want to turn it off. And then the only thing they know is that they have to turn themselves off as well. So you drink and you drink and you drink, or you're doing heroin and you black out and you're, oh, I felt good for that time and I numbed out all the pain, rather than removing the thing that was being painful to you. You're numbing out the pain. You're treating the symptom as opposed to you're treating the problem. Right. So I think that, especially in my generation and your generation, and the way that you are raising your children, is like, you have to understand that like treating the symptoms is not going to work. You have to remove the problem. And I think a big part of that is like, the experimentation of things like MDMA and using in therapy with post-traumatic stress disorder, or, taking mushrooms or doing a lot of THC, or, even tripping on acid for 14 hours in the desert. Like, that'll definitely open your mind. Like, apparently doing peyote while going to Yankee Stadium and going to see the Yankees beat the Orioles 9-3. That'll also definitely change your mind about a lot of stuff. So, I think that, that being introduced into the zeitgeist of everyday life is really, I mean, we're 40, 50 years away from it being like, oh, you don't feel well? Okay, put this crystal on your forehead and meditate for 10 minutes and you'll probably feel better. But, you could see where the path is going to be laid out. We're slowly shedding the shackles and the confines of, air quotes, like the business America of the world. You know what I mean? People are
Totally.
Yeah, people are starting to step out of what was going on around them and starting to look inwards. And then we're like, oh, I'm a powerful motherfucker. Like, I'm the most powerful being. I'm a god. Like, literally, we are gods, right? Like, your soul. Look, you're listening to this in your car on your way to work, or maybe you're at work, right? There's literally an infinite amount of you doing whatever the fuck it wants. And you're like, I got to go to fucking Wendy's and go do this 10-hour shift on my feet and wear these ugly shoes, whatever it is. You know what I mean? You have the opportunity to be a god. You should take that opportunity. Now, I'm not saying go, smoke random peyote, right? Or definitely be called and take the steps to get there. But like, definitely start with mindfulness and meditation and sound healing and yoga. Go into a place like the Mineral Shop in Belmar and just see what calls you. Look at a couple of crystals. See it, these stones that, are so powerful. You could just walk up to them and you feel them and they are going to call to you. And that in and of itself, your intuition into that, if that doesn't blow your mind, if that's your first experience in like intuition and and your astral self, your higher being, if that doesn't blow your fucking mind, then I don't go do peyote. Go come to my house. I'll give you 5 mushrooms. We'll go hang out in the woods and talk to our devils together, and then write it in our journals. You know what I mean? But it's a very powerful experience once you start to understand, and you got to want to. You know what I mean? I'll never be able to bring my dad into a place where they sell spirit candles and things of that nature, and he'll be like, "This is but gay." I'm like, "Oh, sorry, Dad. I don't know what to tell you. Like, this is what I'm into. I'm into rocks and stuff, dude. I don't know what to tell you." But you gotta want it, right? But it's so easy. Take it from me. Like, I'm a goon. You know what I mean? I'm just a troglodyte just walking down the fucking, I might as well be a mollusk. I got nothing on me. I'm just point A, point B, super straight line, and then all of a sudden it was just like I'm turning this way, and if I can do it, I think anyone can do it.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I think that we're all, very much like you're saying, you gotta want it. And we can lead a horse to water, but we can't make them drink, which all of us on either side of the stupid COVID narrative figured that out over the last 2 years, right? Those of us who were like super truthers and were like, they're manipulating us, you have to see, you have to see. And then the ones on the other side who were like, terrible doom. Everybody wear your masks and socially distance and get vaccinated. Like, we just could not convince each other because it's not going to happen. A person has to want to see things this way. But I agree with you that so many more people are opening up to that. And to your point about like oxy and fentanyl and things that people are using, unfortunately, with a lot, like at a great cost, just a handful of years ago. And I know they're still using, but I believe that the reason that drugs and alcohol are such a problem, so to speak, is like, it's obviously multi-layered. But number one to me is because we we have so much trauma. Each of us has so much trauma. And like you said, like, we're just trying to numb out from the thing that we don't want to feel. We do not know. We're not shown. Our generation wasn't shown. Now we're starting to figure it out and we're able to show others. But our generation wasn't shown that like pain is just pain. It's just an experience and it holds information and you just be present with it. It like it hurts you in that it's intensely uncomfortable. It's not pleasant, but it doesn't hurt you in the sense that like it can't take you down unless you believe that it can take you down and you therefore engage with it in that way, right? So we haven't known how to explore it. We haven't known how to move through it. And so we feel like, oh my God, I just have to push this thing away. And wow, amazing. Drugs and alcohol really work for that. But I also believe that on a certain level, we really miss ritual. We really, really miss like engaging. It basically, we've been cut off in what is it? It's secular, right? Like the non-religious view is secular, correct? Or is it non-secular? I can't.
It's definitely one of them.
Yeah, it's definitely one of them. I'm just gonna go secular.
Yeah, secular sounds nice because
Yeah.
it's you said.
If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Anyway,
And if you are, who cares?
who cares? You don't get what I'm saying.
Don't judge her.
So, that's right, everyone. Don't judge me. Okay, so if like we live in a secular society, so there is religion, but society overall has been like government bodies and stuff have mostly been removed from religion, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing, but the what it created was a whole bunch of people craving a connection to the spiritual that they don't know how to find it. They can't like they know it's there somewhere and it's like in our genetic memory that we used to do things in a very mindful way for the purposes of connecting with a more expanded, you know, consciousness and reality. And like I remember thinking about this in my 20s. I never got into like super hard drugs like heroin or anything like that, but I kind of could see the parallel of like, oh, we buy a lot of shit because we have this hole in us where like ritual and spirituality is supposed to go. And people who ritually like, you know, your ritual nightcap or your ritual like post work drink or cigarettes or, you know, like cooking up heroin is a very have your whole kit, right? I think it's like it was a replacement or an attempt to reconnect with that spiritual, yeah, kind of ritual process to connect us in with like a deeper version of reality, but it was coming from a place of trauma. So instead of connecting in more deeply, like you're saying, it's like trying to get out of the human experience.
Yeah, and even then, if you were to do that and you were to hold it in reverence like a ritual,
Mhm.
I was actually having this conversation on we had just recorded Sam PC. We do it like super early on Saturday mornings now. And my co-host Bobby Moore is super not woo-woo. He is 100% like just a dude that is like trying to get from point A to point B. And he has had a very hard life and he understands and he gets it. But we were talking about it and I was like, what do you love about smoking weed? Because he smokes like Snoop Dogg. You know what I mean? He's always high all the time, 100%. And he goes, honestly, like, I love being able to like roll blunts and break up my weed and have a moment to breathe. And I'm like, you mean the ritual of it? He goes, exactly. I get in there and nobody speaks to me. I hold it in reverence. He's like, I hold it in reverence. I hold it in my own space. This is my ritual to do this. He goes, I don't drink like that. I don't do any other drugs. This is he feels like I'm reconnecting to earth. I'm reconnecting back to my untethered self. You know what I mean? I'm saying it a little more eloquent. He said, I like getting high and smoking weed and feeling like I'm myself again with the earth and shit, like he said. But you know, what he means is that, you know, he holds this time for himself every day to ritualistically bond with the planet. And this is where he detaches from the rest of his day and holds that space as like a meditation space. And he's like, you know, you just smoke and you be thinking about shit and then you start to understand stuff. Well, I'm like, this is a meditation practice, Bob. Like you are a spiritual motherfucker. And he goes, no, definitely not. I'm like, but you're doing it. Like you're holding reverence, you're holding a ritual to meditate and to further understand where you have come and where you're going to go. And he goes, yeah. I'm like, that's mindfulness, dude. You're doing it. And a lot of people, if you're listening to this and you do something like, even every morning I grind my coffee beans, right? And then I make my coffee and then I pour it in my cup and I sit down in my little chair and I take like a nice big breath and then I do my little sip of coffee. Even just in that moment, hold it in reverence, have it, love it. This is yours. This is intrinsically yours. It doesn't matter where you are. If you're on vacation and you catch yourself doing it, understand it and know that you are a powerful being and meditate with that and hold that in. Look, if you're gonna cook heroin on a spoon and draw it into a needle and put it in your arm, if there is at all any mindfulness involved in that, try your hardest, please. I love you. Also, I hope that you get better, right? I've had a lot of friends that have, you know, either passed away or have fought or are in rehab or, you know, or my friend Kevin, one of the most powerful motherfuckers I have ever met in my life, 9 years the other day, 9 years sober from fucking heroin. His completely just felt in. It was hard for him. And he is like, dude, you know what it is? I like being here and I like being around and I love my family and I want to be here. So he started meditating and he started, you know, practicing mindfulness and he has now replaced his incredibly addictive personality. Like he spends a lot of money on comic books and tattoos now. And I would way rather that than, you know, some terrible thing that he puts in his body that hurts him and his family. But he, even he has found spirituality and mindfulness. It's not impossible. And if this is your first time ever hearing this sort of conversation, you can fucking super do it. I promise you can. Everything is hard. We were talking about this. Life is fucking hard, dude, because it has to be. Life has got to be hard. We chose this. Know that. Know that you chose this experience. Okay. You got shit to do. Go fucking do it, man. Cause like working this regular 9 to 5 in a job that you hate and like not being with your loved ones, or you don't get to see your favorite friends every once in a while. Why? What's stopping you? Society? Go fucking get a van and move to Utah. Go do whatever you want. My friend Danny one day just decided he bought a van. He bought like one of those conversion vans. He put a bed in the back of it, drove it across the country, put it on a boat, shipped it off to fucking Hawaii, and now he lives on the side of a volcano, and he works at like one of those places that like CEOs go to like decompress or whatever. And he's like the white dude that teaches you how to do like Muay Thai and mindfulness and yoga and breath work and shit. He's just doing that. He just up and decided he sold it. He sold, I said sold it, good grief. He sold everything that he has, bought a van, took that van to California, put it on a boat, and now he lives. He's got like, he's one of those tiny home guys. He's his whole life inside of his van. And he's like, yo, motherfucker's ready to kick trees. Let's do it. That's, if he could do it, you can do it. Anyone can do it. You know what I mean? Like you were a midwife for years. Before that, you were living this regular Joe Schmo life. You know what I mean? And then you had your spiritual awakening, and now you're just like, hey, what's up? I'm the baddest motherfucker on the world. How you doing? I'm going to teach you about the astral realm and how to breathe right and stuff. You know what I mean? I understand that's like an incredible microcosm of what you truly do. But like, people have their moments, like a make or break, like a burn the ships moment, right? Like, do you really want to make it to Treasure Island? I know you got to swim through, you know, these shark infested waters, and you may be miles away, but like, what are you going to do? Stay on a ship where there's a bunch of pirates that are going to kill you or whatever? Or are you going to burn the ships? Like, once you burn the ship, you can't go back. You got to go forward. You have to. And sometimes you have a burn the ships moment. And, you know, it happened for you. It's happened for me. It's happened for Kevin and Danny and all of these other people. All of the coolest motherfuckers that you know have all like traversed this incredibly difficult, winding, blistering, painful road to get to where they are. And we're all still on it. We just understand that it's a process. And like I said earlier, life is hard because it has to be. And you'll get there eventually, and you will find, you know, your God body or whatever they say. Again, white belt. Don't know what I'm talking about, but you'll get there. And I encourage everyone to try and hold reverence to their, you know, spirituality and like a mindful meditation opportunity. Again, even if it's just a cup of coffee, even if it's when you take your bra off when you get home from work, whatever it is, take a moment, take 5 minutes, take 10 minutes and be with yourself and just, you know, process, understand, decompress, and then continue with your day. Please, for the love of all that you hold holy.
Yeah,
whatever,
absolutely.
whatever deity you believe in.
It's like, it's as simple as that. And it is frustrating to come up against people's excuses and our own excuses. Like, I'm not going to pretend I'm above excuses, right? Like, I catch myself making my own excuses too.
One excuse guy.
Yeah. It's like yesterday, even my one that I'm working on is time, because I have 2 little ones. So there's so many things I want to do. Like, so many things I want to do with them. To me, it's non-negotiable. I really don't want to pay somebody to spend most of my week with my kids. I do get somebody to help me with both of them a couple days a week. But other than that, like, I really want to spend time with them. But I also want to create a lot of things and do a lot of things. And so I'm like, well, what am I going to do? Use my kids as an excuse and not, you know what I mean? Like, am I going to stay in this perception that I only have so much time, therefore I can't do it? Or am I going to like take the Rubik's Cube of reality and fucking figure out the hack that allows time to expand and dilate for me? Like, I know that there is one. I just have to put my mind to it. But it's hard when we come across people's excuses and you can hear how like piddly and retarded their excuses are. So like, oh, that, yes, like, just have a fucking cigarette. Okay. Like, take your moment with your little bit of personal fire, have a cigarette, have like, exactly whatever I'm not asking you to give up your vice. Eventually you will be able to give up it. If you start down this path, from this perspective of like honor and reverence to that moment and that mindfulness and dropping in and connecting deeply with yourself as like, I mean, the entire head trip of being incarnated as a human in a 3D, 4D reality. Like if you just take, 2 minutes to just trip on that while you have a smoke, that's all you got to do. And it builds on itself, right? So it's so easy to get started, but we have these excuses or these ideas like, oh, well, in order to be spiritual, I have to eat for an hour a day and I don't have an hour. And it's not like that. You just start with what you have and just do it.
Yeah. And eventually you're not going to need that vice. That moment of smoking your cigarette for 10 minutes turns into a 15-minute cigarette break, turns into a 20-minute outside break, turns into 20 minutes that you allot yourself to go outside and be with the trees. You know what I mean? It's like it's a gradual step, right? And now you may still smoke cigarettes, right? And you may have a 5-minute cigarette in the beginning to start the process, right? But then you might just sit outside with your dog and just be in nature. Or if you're in your basement and that's your quiet place and you go down in your basement and whatever. I smoke cigars. Like, I know obviously my shirt says that I smoke cigars because I look like a Cuban refugee from 1972, but I take that time, and it's nice because it's like it takes a long time, and it's a very drawn out process, and it's and also they're nootropics, so they help your brain kind of fire a little better. You know what I mean? So you could really start to think, and then that's when I decompress. I have a maybe a couple of cigars a week. That's like my allotted decompression time. You know what I mean? I'll process through not the big stuff, but all the little stuff, all the odds and ends, all the side missions, if you will. You know what I mean? All the little things in my day or in my week or in my month that I hadn't gotten to, or maybe, oh, let me roll a couple of things around in my head. Oh, I was thinking about this, that thing, whatever it is. Oh, what kind of recipe am I going to make at work or whatever? I have a couple of ideas. Oh, this story that I'm writing, maybe this character has this thing, or this is what his personality is like, or things of that nature. You'll just roll around a couple of things, see what sticks, write it down, take your time, and keep it moving. And then that would prevent you from being, well, let me rephrase that. That will encourage you to be more mindful and give you an excuse to, I guess excuse is the wrong word again. It won't give you an excuse to be less present, right? You'll be more present is what I'm trying to say in your everyday life if you hold that space of focus to get all the little odds and ends. And that, again, I know I was talking about a sensory deprivation tank, the float tank. They're the best. Like, you got so many tabs open in your brain right now. Ooh-wee. You think your computer can't run? Oh, you can't think right? Oh, it's because you're still thinking about 4 months ago. Oh, you got this. You didn't finalize this. You didn't put a period at the end of this statement. You didn't do that. Blah, blah, blah. You still got all these hangers with dirty shirts in your closet. You got to clear it out if you want to put new shirts in there. And then once you fold all your laundry, once you clean your closet, you're like, man, I feel really good about this. Then what the fuck are you doing? Go do that with your brain. And you get a little opportunity every single day. I know that you have 10 minutes. I know you do. I'm super busy. And you have 2 kids. You have all of these little business ends and things like that. I work a full-time job. I'm engaged. I have 3 podcasts and I do interviews on top of that. Plus I'm writing. I have 10 minutes. Okay. And I take all the time to smoke cigars, which I don't count into my 10 minutes, right? Because that's its own little separate thing for me sometimes. But you have to have 10 minutes. You have to. And I know people that are busier than me that are like, I take 45 minutes to do sound healing every day. And I'm like, you're a savage. You're a savage if you do that. They're like, I'm jealous of that opportunity to do that. It's so important for you to take the time to be mindful and to be present and to just decompress little odds and ends, man. Close your tabs for fuck's sake, please. Even if it's just once a month, you go and you do a float tank, 90 minutes a month, you have that. I promise you, you have that. All the time that you're spending on your phone, all the time that you're spending on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, and extra time in your bathroom breaks while you're at work. And, when you're stopping and you get home from your job and you're sitting in your car and you're just like, take a nice exhale and you kind of push out your day, right? From that exhale, breathe in, huge. Take it in. This is your life. That is your mindful moment. Expand those 3 minutes that you spend in your car to 10 minutes. And even if it's your car, even if you hate your car, even if you drive a Toyota Celica from 1989 and the rear window is broken and your windshield wipers don't work and one of your lights is up and one of them is down, take the moment. You have to. It's so incredibly important to do that. And then from that point, you can just start to expand, and then you can start to understand, who you are or who you are to other people. Have you ever thought about that? Have you ever thought about how important you are to other people? No, of course not, because we don't, right? If you get too high and you sit in a float tank, you start thinking, oh man, I'm like a dick to John every day at work. And like, I think I'm joking around, right? But maybe John thinks I'm a dick. Like, why don't you take some time to be introspective? Why don't you take some time to reevaluate what's important in your life? Like I said, the 20 minutes, what's the average screen time on a phone every day? What, 4 hours, 5 hours? If you're like just chilling, you know what I mean? Like, I have a job, like I work in a kitchen, I can't be on my phone, and I still average like 3 hours of screen time on my phone. Wasted time, man. Like, what do you do? Unless you're like on Inside Timer or you're like on CoStar, or you're like looking out like what people's like, if they're Sagittarius moon and an Aries, whatever, your third house and 96 upside down bologna sandwich, whatever the fuck they are, you have the time, man. You just don't think you do. Reevaluate everything that you have and become more mindful. It's so important.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, that's the whole illusion that like is created to keep us locked into the false matrix grid anyway, is that like, there's a reason to me. The reason that we live by this, air quotes 9 to 5 rhythm, and of course not everybody does, but society does, right? So it affects all of us. The reason that that rhythm is created and constructed is because it kind of hijacks like a lot of your consciousness and taps out a lot of your energy, so that when you're done, like, you're exhausted, and it's tied into the concept of our livelihood. So we feel like we have to do this. And then we're spent by the end of our work day or our school day or whatever it is, what have you. And then, so we just want to kind of go detach and numb out when we get home, and we waste time. And all of that is created for the purpose of, giving us easy excuses to not tap in deeply and like just question reality, question who we are. Just, we don't have to come to like mind-blowing conclusions, although I'm pretty sure everybody does who does take the time to do it. You eventually come to either mind-blowing conclusions or new mind-blowing questions or whatever. But I just brain farted. Essentially, I just said everything that I was supposed to say. Essentially, what I'm saying is like, we kind of have to stop being a bunch of little bitches with our excuses, and myself included. I'm not trying to be sanctimonious or judgmental. It's just like those excuses, those justifications basically are like victim mentality. And we've played in that space on that axis of victim perpetrator for generations and generations and generations. It's tired now. Let's let it go. Like we're capable of so much. But we kind of have to, we are the generation that's having to do a lot of the legwork to break out of this false matrix attachment. And what I'm seeing with the little ones who are starting to come in is that they're not going to have to forget who they are the way that we did, but they couldn't do that without us preparing the path for them. You know what I mean? So like we have to give ourselves grace too. Like this is we chose a hard generation to come in at, to be able to sort of straddle the axis between unconsciousness and trauma, and then like awakening and expansion. It's a lot to hold.
Yeah. And I mean, look, think about it this way. Like, you're a trailblazer. You know what I mean? You got to blaze that fucking trail. And it's hard, man. Nobody's going to want to do it. Like, nobody wants to do it unless they really fucking want to do it. But you are going to be, generations of people behind you are going to be incredibly more better off, like so much more beneficial if we do this than if we just continue to just exist in this world of like red versus blue and the Yankees and the fucking Dodgers. And that being said, 27 rings all day, that we fuck with the Yankees all day. But the thing of the nature of the thing is, right, is that like we are so indoctrinated in the you versus us and this beaten down hard path of like, Rome existed in the same time that we are, right? Like we have to move on from, saluting statues and getting up and chanting and, doing all of the little things and, don't look at the sky for too long and don't hang out at night because, the stars, they come back to earth. You know what I mean? Like, hello, that's why my name on all my social media platforms is Earth to Adam. I heard that so often as a kid. They're like, hello, Earth to Adam, we're here, come back to where we are. You know what I mean? And I'm like, really? Are we here? Like, shouldn't we be up there? Seems like way cooler, right? Or like down there, or like in over there in the astral realm, like whatever dimensional way that you can point, right? Like I was always a space brain. And to your point, like I'm so good at excuses. Oh, they're delicious. Oh my God, I love a good excuse, boy. Oh, if you make plans with me, woo, good luck. Good luck, boy. There is a 65% chance that I won't be there because I love them. They're the best. Excuses are the greatest thing ever because it gives me an opportunity to not do stuff, and not doing stuff is great. But sometimes there's stuff you got to do, right? And to your point, you have to break the trend. You know what I mean? Like everyone had a grandfather that did so, or a grandmother or an uncle or an aunt, or maybe even your parents that kind of like told you that you couldn't do shit, right? They're like, no, you'll never be able to do that. You shouldn't do that. And I am that person. Like I had that a lot in my life. I had a lot of, you'll never be able to do that. You shouldn't do that. And I still have that. I still have those people in my life. They're super close to me and they tell me all the time, like, you shouldn't do that. Why are you doing that? That's the dumbest thing. Like at my mother's funeral, I had a family member tell me the time that they were the most disappointed in me.
Wow.
It's bananas. And they were just speaking, right? I don't think they understood what they were saying. But they were like, that's where you fucked up, man. You really fucked up when you did XYZ and you didn't do PDQ instead. Like if you had done PDQ, I think that you would be much better now, even though that I don't know anything about your fucking life and I only see photos of you on Instagram and stuff. And even though you look incredibly happy and spiritually you feel like you're the most awake that you've ever been and you're glowing, and also you're doing a really good job of not being sad at your mother's funeral right now, you really fucked up that time that you didn't do that thing. And I think, even though I have zero input in your every single day life, like that I know better than you because I'm older than you and I was around when you were 5. Okay. And I know what you used to look like when you were eating Cheetos and watching the Ninja Turtles. Okay. So I know you fucked up and you should have did this other thing. And granted, they don't know. They have no idea. They're super fucking, you know, tired, and they've been beaten down by life. We have an opportunity to not be that generation. I will never ever be that generation, and I don't plan on having kids. If I do, I will be adopting, right? Just personal choice. No skin off of anyone's nose. No, I'm not here to like start an argument or do whatever it is with anyone. Please don't slide in my DMs and tell me that having kids was the greatest thing in your life. That's great for you and your children. I'm sure you love them. It's not for me, Jack. So, but I have godchildren, right? I have nieces and nephews. I have other people that I interact with every single day of my life. And I don't say, you should have done this. I say, what do you want to do? Because I never, ever, ever want to be a person so disconnected that I go to someone's funeral and I speak to their children about when they fucked up and when I was the most disappointed in them. And that my feelings and my thoughts about what I think I know is infinitely more important. That's the information that I need to get out to them, instead of how are you? How are you feeling? What can I do to help you? You know, I never want to be that person. That generation happened before us. Now, do you want to be that person? Do you want to go to somebody's funeral and talk to their children that way? And it doesn't even have to be that extreme. That just happens to be, that happened last week. You know what I mean? Like, and even thinking about it now, you know, I am struggling to get the words out because of the mixed emotions that I still have. Like, I want to go fucking strangle that dude. You know what I mean? Like, how the fuck could you ever think that now is the time, my dude? Like, you don't want to get coffee tomorrow, 45 minutes from now, when we're not in a fucking funeral home. Maybe when the corpse of my fucking mother is out of the room, can we have this discussion? No, now is the time. Now is really, you're so important to me that now is the time. Sick. I don't ever want to be that disconnected, ever. You know what I mean? And granted, it's easy for me to say that, right? Because I'm not him, and I'm not in that space, right? And I'm more acutely aware of things of that nature, right? After my experiences and the life that I'm leading. And obviously I'm putting a focus on being more mindful, right? And a dude that has worked essentially a fucking union job for the last 50 years and doesn't care about, and will go home and drink whiskey or whatever until he falls asleep, and has been doing that since the fucking 70s, and has had nothing but bad shit happen to him in his life. And he just wants to fucking, you know, he doesn't understand. He doesn't take the time to hold reverence for his, you know, his mindfulness and to meditate. And he doesn't want to be, he doesn't see the importance of acutely being in tune with the world. So who am I to judge him, right? Maybe he's working his own shit out, right? And I've been known to not have a filter, right? I'll just say whatever the fuck I want when I am as subtle as a cinder block at times. I get it. But like, at least I understand that the truth is more important to me to communicate that. And if he had come to me like, hey, I don't want to like fuck you up right now, right? But getting the truth out is more important than your feelings. Okay, here we go. No, he was, hey, what's up? Okay, this thing. And I was like, oh, fucking what? He was like, you know, when PDQ, you really should have did that instead of XYZ now that you're super happy. I'm like, all right, dude, thanks. I appreciate it. Go fuck yourself, eat a dick, whatever. And I kept it moving. But like, you know, that's tough. It's tough to hear. And it's tough to think that generation of people is who crafted this world so far, you know, and that's what we're dealing with every day.
And totally, I think that's an amazing illustration of like kind of where we're coming from, and that we are straddling these two worlds. Like this previous, we were raised by the generation that so beaten down with their trauma that they just kind of, most of them succumb to it. And so then we get messages from them about like, you can never do this or that. You can never do the thing that you want. Don't believe in yourself. Don't even bother. Don't even bother trying. It's just the way it is. It's just the way
Yep.
life is, right? And it's like, it is kind of easy to judge them because we grew up hearing that and it sucked. But it is also like, we can see they're not necessarily trying to be dicks. I mean, sometimes they are,
Right.
but mostly it's coming from a place of trauma. And what we are doing is like, just like you said, whether you have, it doesn't even matter. Even if you didn't have, God, children and nieces and nephews, even if you're not a kid person and you weren't going to have kids around in your life at all whatsoever, still your willingness to hold the space and the belief that like, yeah, like, what do you want to do with your life? And just considering life from the perspective of like, what can we do with it? That is a huge gift. Like the way I see it is kind of, we're holding these vibrational doors open for each other, these frequency doors. Like, so the frequency of believing much less restricted and much more limitless ideas of ourselves, that's a frequency. So that frequency really wasn't available in the way that it is now to our parents' generation and our grandparents' generation. They were very, very like I remember my grandparents would talk to me about my career when I was a little girl, and it was always in terms of like what's possible. It was always in terms of like finding a job, never in terms of creating your own path. And
Right.
that's how it was for them. And so now for our generation to hold the possibility and the belief that like you can do what you want with your life. You can like, you can carve your own path, whatever it is. You don't have to follow this like very well trodden path. You can go cut your way through the long grass with your, spiritual machete. And it's going to be hard work because no one blazed that trail before, but that you can do it. That's a frequency of consciousness that even if you don't ever talk about it with kids or youth or anything, just the fact that you believe in that makes it more accessible to everyone else. And as we collectively hold these beliefs, it's way more accessible. It's
For
just
sure.
like a thought field that we can tap into. And it can be like a lifeline and a saving grace for somebody who doesn't have any adults in their world who are giving them any permission, but they can just feel, they can tap into, a thought field remotely. They don't have to do it through the example of another person. They can just tap into it remotely and just be like, but I know that there's something else available. And they don't know why they know that, but they do. And it's because they can tap into the thought field, that door to that possibility that's being held open by others who are cultivating that open-mindedness for themselves.
Yeah, and even if, I'm given the opportunity to help sharpen somebody's machete, right? Or like give them a new stone to run down that machete and get it sharper than it's ever been before, or just a conversation, a nice little, pop in and, hey, what's up? How are you? I love you. I hope that you're doing great. Or leading by example. If you surround yourself with enough crazy motherfuckers that just do whatever they want, you're going to start doing whatever you want. You know what I mean? Cause like there's not going to be a ton of people initially, right? Like there's not a lot. And like, okay, so when I met you, right, and we had our first conversation and we were discussing like the Akashic records and your entire experience with your son and your husband and World War I and all this other craziness that was going on. even that just sharpened the blade. You know what I mean? I'm like, okay, like this is a bad bitch. She's doing whatever the fuck she wants, and I'm gonna do that too. You know what I mean? Because like if she can do it, I can do it, and that's just what it comes down to. So even if it is just, you see your friends going to yoga class, or you see people on the internet, or you're lucky enough to be part of your group, and you're talking to other people about their souls, and you're on Facebook chats, and you're doing this and you're doing, you know what I mean? Like, or if you listen to this podcast and it makes you more acutely aware of, anything, or if you listen to any podcast, if you have any conversation with anyone and you're just like, man, I was really digging those vibes from that 86-year-old man smoking a cigar outside of a pizzeria. And he just kind of looked like he was doing whatever the fuck he wanted. And he looked like he was having a good time. So maybe I should start incorporating whatever the fuck I want to do into my life kind of every day. And then the more that you do that, the more you're like, hey, like this doing whatever I want kind of stuff is pretty sick. I like it a lot. I'm going to start doing this more. And then you start to allot more time in your day for you to do whatever you want. And then whatever you want turns in, if you pair that with the mindfulness and the meditation and the holding of a practice and the reverence and the seeking of a God body and the further understanding and the understanding of, trying to maybe communicate with capital S source, things of that nature, you could really start to get the ball rolling. And again, if a little conversation that you have with some bro from New Jersey sharpens that blade just a little bit more, I would be incredibly grateful. So if you need to, talk about cool shit, if you ever want to bounce ideas off of someone, by all means, please let me know. I am more than willing to have a weird conversation about some shit that no one else ever wants to talk about. Trust me, I've had most of the conversations already, and if I haven't, I would love to add it to the list, because I don't know if you know who Jason Alme and Chris Watsky are, but they are some fucking weird dudes, man, and we talk about a lot. And I would love to continue that conversation with anyone. So if anyone is feeling like any amount of trepidation, or any, you're scared, or if you're lonely, or if you don't know where to start, or whatever it is, please, by all means, reach out, because I would love to just get more people on this vibe. And we in the Simmons household, we hold one statement higher than any other person or any other statement that there is, and as a rising tide raises all ships. And if you just help to raise the tide, all ships, my ship, your ship, Johnny's ship, Chris, Jason, Kaz, everyone, all their ships will be raised, because we are raising the tide. So again, like, we continue to harp on this, the importance, and just start it, just do it, just go fucking do it. You don't have to go and do mushrooms in the woods. I promise. You could just pour a cup of coffee and take a couple of breaths. And then if you want to have a conversation, hit me up, man. I would be more than happy to help in any way that I could. Please.
Yeah. I really feel like that is exactly what's happening. Like I was talking in the spring about feeling like we went through in April, May, and June this quantum leap in the collective consciousness. And and we're still going through it, but I feel more like in the July, August, September, we're kind of like chilling and evening out a little bit, so a little bit like the integration period. But I think it is because of that rising tide. The rising tide raises all ships, and the more that we engage in these conversations, we share these conversations, listen to these conversations, it does sharpen our spiritual machetes, and it really, really it. The whole thing is, I personally I don't believe that psychic development is hard, or that spiritual perspective development is as hard as we think it is. It does require that sort of prioritization and application, and it requires some patience, because we live in a culture that has trained us to expect immediate gratification because of our technology and things like that. And so we tend to get a little bit impatient, and it also cultivates a sense of comparisonitis. And, so we see what others are doing, we hear what others are experiencing, and it's very easy to come back to this thing like, whoa, that's not happening for me. So it does require like being patient and kind of letting go of our inner diva that, wants results and wants them right away, and being willing to put in the foundational work.
Yeah, the ego is a powerful bitch for sure. It,
Totally. And it's like, it's kind of like, I think I first heard this analogy with Abraham Hicks, but it just applies so much. It's like, if you're going to plant a seed, if you're going to plant a garden, you can't plant the garden and then, like, half an hour later be like, where's the tomatoes? And throw a hissy fit and dig up the seed and be like, it doesn't work. Like, I'm just not, I'm not meant to have tomatoes. For some reason, it's not the cards for me, or whatever ridiculous bullshit we tell ourselves. And so I do feel like that's kind of one of the hard pieces around psychic development, is that willingness to lay the foundation and be patient while the seed is germinating. That's really hard. And that goes for all manifestation. But the other part of psychic development that makes it actually kind of easy, really, is that it's just the expansion of our consciousness. It's the understanding that we have a filtration system, and it's filtering out all that we can't handle. Like, just going back to the example of your peyote experience, and like, you got kicked out of the Miami, like Astral Miami Fractal Club because you weren't ready, and you said that you had to go through some healing and, like, unblock some shit first before you could get back there. I think it's really like that with psychic stuff, is like, we have beliefs that mediate out what we're not, or filter out what we're not ready to take in and experience. And so, actually, rather than having to like develop a new gift, it's more, to me, a process of just expanding what we believe is possible, and therefore being able to receive and interact with information that's already surrounding us all the time anyway. We were just previously filtering it out.
100%. And, again, like, I don't know, you just said it so eloquently. You just double down. I'm not going to double down on everything that you just said again, but you're 100% correct. That's a great analogy. The seed and the watering of the garden and the getting the tomatoes in 30 minutes. Like, it sounds preposterous. It sounds crazy. You're like, why would anyone expect to get tomatoes in 30 minutes? Because I know how a garden works, because I've seen it happen. Well, you got to water and you got to germinate. You got to make sure.
Right.
God.
Well, my neighbor has tomatoes.
Right.
I'm not as good as my neighbor.
Right. And, I am such a victim of that as well. Like, my whole life, I was always comparing myself, and I was never good enough. And I still get that way, man. I get it all the time. Like, oh, I only have X amount of downloads, and I'm not doing this, and I've been doing it for this long, and blah, blah, blah. Like, who cares? I'm not the best at what I do. Great. Am I the best version of myself? Yes. So far, yeah. I'm pretty fucking good at being me, man. I'm still figuring it out, but it's important to understand that. It's because, like, oh my God, I want to be other people so bad. They got it so good. I see 30 seconds of their life on Instagram, and I'm like, they have it all.
Yeah, right.
It's the best. A boat that one time, and they keep posting photos of it. And I want to go on a boat. And then you go on a boat and you're like, yo, boats are dumb. This is the dumbest shit ever. How come I'm not having a cool time like the guy on Instagram? I got 110 likes. I only got 14 of me on a boat. Like, who cares? Just go be the best version of you, and, take the time again to water the seeds and to germinate and to make sure that, you're taking care of your garden. You can't just plant a seed in hardwood floors and then hope that, you're going to get a bunch of flowers in the middle of your living room. You know what I mean?
And then tell yourself, self-indulgent, dramatic stories about how things never work out for you, or you're not gifted, or whatever, and I also, like, I'm saying all this because I did it. Like, that was one of the big things for me to figure out. I thought for over a decade, I wanted to be psychic and not realizing that I was psychic the whole time. And it was because I was being impatient. I was trying to plant seeds and then I was being like, oh, that doesn't work. And then I just basically, my baby died and all of that kind of exploded. My ego just died along with him. And I was like, oh, none of those previous perceptions of self mattered or were even real at all.
I mean, and at that point, like, what else are you going to do?
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
Totally.
I literally have nothing else. All right, we're going to start, let me start watering my seeds. Let me see what I got. And then, you took your journey and you're still on your journey and you're working your way around and through. Everyone thinks like progress is a straight line race. Like, oh, we're all running the 400 meter.
Yeah.
Thick. No, you're on a fucking Tough Mudder. And then when you get done with those 25 obstacles and 14 miles of mud covered electric shock, fire induced, like drowning and jumping off of mountains, guess what, motherfucker? You're doing another one. You're going to go and do it again. And you get a new headband this time. And then every time you do that, you get a nice new piece of armor. You get something that'll help you on your next journey. It's the way that I describe it, because I'm such a dork, is like a video game, right? Like when you're playing Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time, or whatever game you're playing, right? You do level 1, then you get the sword and the shield, right? At the end, you're like, okay, cool. I just have to learn how to move around. And then I get a sword and a shield, right? And then you can kind of protect yourself a little bit. And then there's a motherfucker at the end who's just like, oh my God, like I can't use this little thing, right? I got to do my best. And then you have to start to use your mind and you do this. And then you get something else that's going to help you, right? By the end of the game, right? You got the hook shot, you got the boots that you can climb on the wall with, you have the little swing, you can Indiana Jones across stuff, and you got a better shield, and you got a better sword, and you have better armor, and you have a good helmet, and you got a telescope, and you got a map, and you got all this. What do you think that you're pretending to do? You're living a life in a video game. You're living a life in a story, right? Star Wars. It's just some fucking orphan hanging out in the desert with his aunt and his uncle. I don't know my ass from my elbow, nothing. Some old man named Ben Kenobi is going to show up and he's like, oh, hey, dork, I know who you are. Come on with me. I'm going to show you the way. Right. And he's just like, I don't know what that means. Then you give him a fucking laser sword. And you're just like, okay, you and your laser sword, you go ahead. You get your arm chopped off. Guess what, dork? You can't hold your laser sword anymore. Okay, your robot's going to help you talk to this guy. And you're going to get handsome space pirate guy and his giant dog, and they're going to get in their ship and they're going to bring you from point A to point B. That chick might be your sister. Don't worry about it. You can figure it out. Oh, that guy that's breathing real heavy, he's asthmatic, he's your dad. Guess what? He didn't die, and now he wants to kill you. Also, he was the guy that chopped off your hand 2 movies ago, but now you have to fight him, and you're going to use a new light sword. Like, people are like, no, I'm just a dude that drives in a car that goes to my job 9 to 5, whatever. You literally, you continue on a journey, the hero's journey, right? You start to accrue these not only defense mechanisms, but things that will help protect you, right? You get a new sword, you get a new piece of armor, you get a good helmet, you get a little bit of information, you get a good pair of shoes to help you walk farther. You know what I mean? You're not going to go on a hike in flip-flops. You're just not going to do it. What are you going to do if you start hiking? You're going to go get a pair of hiking shoes. It is the exact same process that you have to take in life. You have to earn and accrue these things through time and through trial and error, so that you know that you are able to do this. You know what I mean? You're not just going to get up off the couch and go play in the NFL, my dude. Like, you're going to get creamed by a bunch of dudes that have finely tuned bodies that are like literally built for this, right? But it's not impossible. You can get in shape enough to do that, to be a super athlete. You could just do it. You don't have, well, I got bad knees. Cool, go get them fixed. And then go keep going. You know what I mean? It's the same thing in like a spiritual journey or in a psychic journey. You have to like just start doing what you got to do. Get all the little odds and ends going. You know what I mean? You can't get to your car to drive to work without your keys. Okay. You just can't do it. Right. There's not a telepathic Tesla that you can drive and you just be like, take me to the place, and then it'll take you to a place. You know what I mean? There are steps and processes, even in the micro, you know what I mean? Like you can't just drink water without a container of water. You know what I mean? You have to get a container, you have to fill it with water, then you have to drink from, you know what I mean? So that process of those planting the seeds, doing the small little things in a process to get to where you could start to, unlock psychic abilities or start to be more mindful or even be acutely aware of what a stone can help you feel. You know what I mean? These are all little things. There are steps that you have to take. You can't just like wake up like Honey Boo Boo and then go to sleep and then wake up and now you're Amy Belair. It doesn't work. You know what I mean?
Totally. There's a process. I mean, that is a feature of this realm is process. And I mean, I really think that it's like I really appreciate your use of the Zelda reference or any kind of video game because I really see it the same way. But my brain thinks in terms of Super Mario Bros. The one that went along with Duck Hunt, because that was, that was my game. I never really expanded my gaming beyond Donkey Kong for Super NES. So, but I think about it, when you watch those people on the internet who like beat the whole world in like 4 minutes and 44 seconds or something, there's this one guy, I can't remember the video, but he basically like he knows which tunnel to go down to like get to, like a shortcut to this world that then leads you to the eighth world and you fight the big boss. Like, how many times did he have to play that game to get to be able to beat it in that record time? And that's what we're all doing here is we are every time, we get so frustrated that repeating patterns happen in our lives that feel uncomfortable, myself included. But the truth is, the reason that they're happening is because there is some thing that needs to click in us so that it doesn't happen anymore. And it feels frustrating, but for like my analogy is, when you're deciding you want to like learn the words to a really good rap song, like this morning, my 1-year-old loves music and he pulled out a CD and he's one, right? So he doesn't know what CD it is, but it was like Wu-Tang. So we put it on and
My clock.
he feels it. Yes. And it's amazing. I didn't even notice that. I was listening to Wu-Tang and I was thinking like, I used to know the words to, all these songs, right? And I remember the process of learning the words and how I could barely get like every fourth one or something. And then the more I practiced, the better I got. And the more I practiced it, the better I got. And there was a sweet spot where I felt like so proud of myself when I would get through the whole song and be able to, rap every single word in time along with them, with all the inflections and everything.
Yeah.
And then though, it would become so easy that it lost its thrill.
Of course.
And then you look for a different song. And I think that's exactly what we're doing in this whole game of life. Is that we're coming, and like you said, life is hard. Yep, because there's that's creates the distinction between this realm and when we're just disincarnated spirits, is that there's very little challenge. Here there's very much challenge. And so we get to like sharpen our swords and collect new shields and helmets and whatever, and like, perspectives and wisdom that allow us to just like game the game faster and better and more efficiently. And I do believe that the mastery level of consciousness is when we're so like we come in and we're like, oh yeah, this place again. It doesn't take us long to remember, and we're able to move through it with great ease so that it kind of feels a little bit boring. And then that's when we're like, probably ready to like truly graduate. But I think we probably lived through a lot of life sims to get to that point.
Yeah, hell yeah. I mean, there's only so many times you can bomb atomically Socrates' philosophies and hypotheses. You know what I mean? You're like, all right, maybe I move on to cream or maybe I move on to a different
Right.
song. The same way as like, like you said with doing the speed runs in the Super Mario Brothers is like, the game gets boring unless the the levels get harder. And if the level is harder, that means that you're doing better. You know what I mean? And life is really hard, and sometimes it's not, and then it gets super fucking hard. And then that's when like, know that your life is getting harder because you're better. Like, it's not getting harder because more hard shit happens. It's because you're getting better and the regular shit isn't hard anymore. And now you need more hard shit to get better. And you're here to get better. And take it as an opportunity to be and get and exist in a better time. You know what I mean? Because level 7 is always going to be harder than level 1. But if you go back to level 1, you know what I mean? It's like with anxiety. I have travel anxiety. Like, getting in the car was the most spooky, terrifying, Dracula fighting thing that I've ever experienced in my life. I'm like, oh no, werewolves and Frankenstein and ghosts and goblins and ghouls and all that shit. Is just sitting in a Volkswagen Jetta and driving 10 minutes down the road is literally like being Van Helsing. Okay. You can't tell me any different, right? And now I do it all the time because I have to, because I do it every single day. And then sometimes you drive a little farther, and then sometimes you go to a different place. Sometimes you get on a plane, sometimes you get on a train, sometimes you're this, you're that, you're blah, 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 whatever it is. That's just the next level. The more times that you do that, the better you're going to get at doing that. And then you're going to step up and be like, okay, now we're going on a hike. Now we're doing this. Now we're doing that. Then you start to experience the benefits of the more difficult tasks. And that's the way I think about my anxiety. But I think it's a great, representation of what we're talking about as far as, the difficulties of everyday life, and even the difficulties of learning Wu-Tang songs.
Both of those things. Yeah, absolutely. It's a fantastic analogy. And I'm okay. So everyone, as you know, recently started Patreon. It's great. And I happen to know, Adam shared with me that he has been really contemplating superpowers lately. And we're going to talk about superpowers and the cultivation and like which superpowers we have, if we can only have one superpower, all that kind of stuff. But we're going to talk about it in the secret bonus episode that goes behind $5 a month tier and Patreon. And you want to get in on that.
So it the cost of a cup of coffee. You love coffee, so do it.
That's right. It's like in lieu of 1 cup of coffee a month. So we're going to wrap up the conversation here for the main podcast. Thank you so much, Adam, for coming and sharing your wild accidental peyote awakening story, but also just all of your wisdom about the mindset work behind opening up to spirituality and just like the ease, the way it can be easy if we just let it be easy. I really appreciate your perspective and your wisdom.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for holding a stage and for taking this wild left turn, right turn, left turn journey with me. I love you so much. You're the greatest. Thank you again so much for coming on The Creatures and for interacting with us as often as you do, and for having soul space, and for just being like a conduit of all things that are spiritual, and just being, there as there as you can be for everyone that tries to interact with you. I love this. I love your podcast so much. Everything that you've done since the time I got introduced to all of your work and things of that nature, you're just the best. I'm so grateful to be here and to have this conversation with you. It's great. I wish that we could talk all the time in this forum, as often as possible. But I'm aware, selfishly, I think that it would be great because I selfishly just love speaking to you. I don't care if anyone ever listens to it. It's the best just being able to communicate with you in such an open and honest forum. And it makes me feel more like myself, which I always appreciate. Thank you so much for having me. Again, if anyone is listening to this and they want to hit me up and they want to continue any part of this conversation, Earth_2_Adam on all social media platforms. My name's Adam Simmons, and I'm here to talk about weird shit. So that is just what that is. So hit me up, please. And again, 1,000,000 times, thank you so much for having me. This is the best.
Oh, I just big love to you, brother. Thank you so much for all that affection. It really landed right in my heart in an ooey lovely way. And also, everybody, well, I haven't listened. I didn't even realize you had another podcast. Honestly, I didn't know that you had the.
It's like a lot of sports and dick jokes and like yelling about silly stuff. We talk about spiritual awakening, and sometimes we have like therapists come on and we try and basically it's just a forum for me to show my friend Bobby Moore to the world. He and I, we've been friends for over 25 years at this point, and one day we had a conversation about a podcast, and then that was 7 years ago. We haven't stopped recording since. So it's just a fun place to get silly and to talk about, everything and everything. So, if you're into that sort of thing, by all means, please go check us out. But Creatures of the Night is more of like a tune of what, you and all of your fans will be into. That's like a lot of woo-woo white people, astral projection, like the government is controlling us type stuff. So, Chris,
That is so funny. You guys are so funny.
we're just a couple of friends talking about silly shit. That's really what podcasting is, and I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's a good time. Everybody check it out. Of course, Adam's social media stuff, the links will be in the show notes and the links to his podcast. And also, I just have to say that the podcast art for Creatures of the Night is like,
Thank you so much. I actually came up with the name and the art for the podcast before the podcast.
amazing.
Just like I was super high and I was like, you know what are cool? Tigers. It would be a lot cooler if it had 3 eyes, to the point where now I don't know if you could see.
Nice.
I got a 3-eyed tiger tattooed on my body because it is just, it feels like home to me. So that in and of itself, I really super appreciate that. Thank you so much. Yeah, Chris and Jay do a great job of, kind of wrangling me when I go on tangents and things of that nature. So it's a big group effort, but I do greatly appreciate that.
Everybody, go check it out. Adam, thank you again so much. Beautiful listeners, I adore you with all my heart. Thank you for your time and your attention and coming on this journey with us. Have a beautiful day or night wherever you are, and I'll catch you on the next episode, my friend.
Whether you are just starting out on your spiritual awakening journey or you're ready to dive deep into activating your psychic gifts, I have a complete store ready for you to learn all the things that you are looking for answers to. I have light codes to upgrade and calibrate your consciousness. I have a class on the first 13 dimensions, a class on dark entities, a class on the human ego from a multidimensional perspective, and powerful modules and bundles on psychic activation, with more classes and courses being added all the time. In fact, I just added 3 classes about the Christ light frequency and the holographic field that have been selling like wildfire, and I get a ton of messages from people who appreciate this content. I truly love to serve you all, and I do my best to translate all the downloads and transmissions I receive from the Akashic Records into this library of information for you. You can find it all at amybelair.com/store. Enjoy! Thank you so much for being here with me on this episode. I appreciate you more than my words could ever say. Please remember to rate, review, subscribe, and share, and I will catch you on the next episode.